Welcome to the Cozy News Corner for Week 5, where we go through the Week 5's open source news and think about it and talk about it a bit. So, first off, we have a couple of security vulnerabilities that we're going to go through really quickly. So we have some security risk in Chromium. It's here for Bookworm, but it's available for all different distributions and so on. And it's execution of arbitrary code. So again, another of these. Upgrade again. Next up, we have Containerd, which has several security flaws with unauthorized access. So if you're running Docker containers, it's very important to upgrade this. Next up, we have OpenJDK, which has a critical cert validation man-in-the-middle attack. Not good. So if you're using OpenJDK, Java runtime, latest version 17, you should upgrade because there is an issue with cert. And then we have CJSON. So if you're running JSON and using it in C, we have a memory access vulnerability. So if we got a particular JSON with a very strange formatting, you could have a denial of service for that service. Next up, we have a Git LFS. So if you're running that, we have several security issues there. Upgrade. And we have GIMP and buffer overflow for a particular crafted image file, and it could potentially lead to execution of arbitrary code, so please upgrade. Next up, we have OpenSSL, which has a critical secure socket layer issue with the denial of service, information leak, and potentially remote code execution. And this is so critical that a lot of different tooling around OpenSSL has also been upgraded. So if you're using something that uses those libraries, please upgrade. Next up, we have ImageMagick, critical denial of service for this. So if you have a specifically crafted MSL script, it could potentially lead to an execution of arbitrary code. And next up, we have FFmpeg, which has a memory issue, which could lead to denial of service. Again, specially crafted movies, I guess. And OpenSSL, again, the denial of service notice. So this is another version of the same issue here. So let's go into some normal news then. We have Calibre 9, which is this open source ebook reader, which I have used, and it has now a new bookshelf mode and high resolution scroll and so on. So it's a nice new update if you have a lot of books in EPUB or KeyPub and so on, and you want to look at them, then download the latest version and you will get a nicer view. Next up, we have France that just created its own open source alternative to Microsoft Teams and Zoom. I don't think that they actually created it, but there is a thing called Visio, which is in testing that they are trying to use. It's MIT license and open source, and they are have been using it with 40,000 users across their different departments and so on, and they are slowly but surely going over to something that is both created and open source and also hosted in France. So that is an interesting news, and more of this development where we are segregating the world and not being reliable, rely so much about our infrastructure with our friends all over the world. OpenSSL here, again, very secure an issue with it. So we see here that there is a lot of CVEs that is in OpenSSL. So now we need to upgrade it. And also Tails, which is using this. And this is a simplification in order to tunnel traffic to Tor. So it's a distribution which has Tor built in, and it has now released a new version to patch this very critical OpenSSL vulnerabilities. Next up, we have Linux Lite, 7.8 is now out with a lot of rewrites and GTK K4 transitions. So this is a light version of Debian with GUI and a lot of or it's built on Ubuntu, I see here, but it's a light version, has a lot less functionality, and a couple of small applications, and all of their applications have been upgraded. So this is something that you can run on hardware that isn't that that's powerful. So it's an interesting little operating system. And then we have a bunch of developers have gone together to make Linux gaming great. So it's Basite, Fira Labs, Nobra, Shimra OS, and so on, and a couple of other projects. And they have gone together, created the Open Gaming Collective. And this is some kind of grouping where they are having democracy and voting on what to do next. And what they are looking forward to working on is kernel patches, graphics and display tooling, hardware enablement for gaming peripherals, and gaming focused packages like GameScope. So they are going to, together with a lot of vendors and so on, create more support for all kind of games. And I think this is really cool. And they also have the glorious egg roll on their side. So this is just awesome for the future. I'm gaming in Linux. I have not looked back. I've been in Linux for 3 years now, I think. And it's just great. Next up, we have Systemd creator. Now quits Microsoft and forms his own Linux focused startup. Yeah, it's not that much to say about it. He starts Immutable, a Linux-focused outfit. It's interesting that it's no longer... and I didn't know, actually, that Systemd was built by someone from Microsoft. It doesn't really matter that much. Systemd is a good implementation to... gather some things in Linux. Some things have been very obtuse before, and Systemd is making it more cohesive and easier to work with. And I think that they have taken a little bit too large of a scope in order to make everything Systemd pretty much. But I think the service handling and also timers and so on is something that was very confusing before with initd. So I think that's a really great addition. But having timers and cron jobs is a little bit confusing. So we'll see what's going on there later on. Next up, we have Shotcut, the video editor, and it now has hardware video decoding. So if you are using Shotcut, you can now use your GPU in order to make things run much more performant on the Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. So if you have large video files and want to encode them into a particular format, or after you have done your cuts, you can now do that much faster. Next up, we have Last Signal. And this is a new open source Deadman's Switch that you can self-host. So I've not looked into this, and I'm not really there in my thoughts that I would die tomorrow. But if that would be the case, a lot of things would be lost. And rightfully so. I think that there are a lot of things that I don't really care if somebody takes over or if something happens. I would like that, let's say, someone in my family goes in and tells you that I'm no longer here. That would be nice. But I'm not sure that there is much benefit in writing a lot of things on other platforms and so on. But Last Signal is a way of sending out information when you're not longer here. And it's a way of you having somewhere where you report in and say, I'm still alive, I'm still alive, and still alive. And when it doesn't hear that you are alive, it will send out information to your closest friends and dearest, and then they can take that information and do what you want them to do in case of your demise. Next up, we have System Decorator again here. We have already talked about that one. Then we have a really cool thing here, GeForce Now. The NVIDIA graphics driver software that is running in at least Windows in order to do some tweaks and changes in your graphics drivers now has support for Linux. They will create a native Linux application, and it's now in beta. So in the future, we might have this application that we can run that in Linux as well. So we see everything comes up Linux today. Next up, we have the Linux kernel that quietly formalizes what happens if Linux Torvalds steps away. I'm not sure if this is really needed. There is one way of doing these kind of things, and I think they already had something in the works for this. So Linus Torvalds, during interviews, they asked what happens if you suddenly disappear, and he says it's not really a big issue because he has people that are very close to him and works in tandem with him, and just one other of those very close persons, I think there are 3-4 different people that could just step in and take over today if they wanted to. So it's not really a big deal, but formalizing it and say, okay, if this happens, then you are the one. That's a good thing, I guess. But I don't think we should be that scared about the Linux kernel just losing focus one day. Next up, we have Gparted 1.8, and it improves the FAT handling. I remember it could be like 5 or 6 years ago when I wanted to resize a FAT partition or NTFS partition, and Gparted just didn't have support for it, which was a little bit annoying. So having more support for different partition types is really good. If you are in the case where you want to either shrink or resize or move about your different partitions, then having support for FAT in a better way is really nice. Next up, we have image, and this is something that will in this release they add the possibilities to free up space and do web backups, and they are freeing up space by reducing duplicates and so on. And web-based backups is always great for your image data. I haven't looked into this, having my own image gallery self-hosted. It could be really interesting, so that is perhaps something I will look into in the future in order to set up in my environment here, so I have somewhere to store my images. Next up, we have VirtualBox 7.2.6, which is just stability and fixes around Linux and Mac OS and Windows. And the big thing here is that it improves reliability on Windows 11 on AMD systems and so on. And I had a real problem running Windows 11 in VirtualBox before. I have been running VirtualBox 6, I think. So that they improve these kind of support is, of course, welcome. Next up, we have GStreamer 1.28 that brings Vulkan, video AV1 and a VP9 decoder, plus H.264 encode. So this is really nice. I didn't know that GStreamer was missing these kind of things, but having AV1 will bring video files to become a lot smaller, and H.264 is very common when it comes to creating video content, so having support for that is of course really nice. And then we have Transmission, a BitTorrent client that released with new major improvements. It will use lower CPU and have faster downloads, improved IPv6 support, and so on. I haven't used transmission. I used uTorrent, I believe, when I actually was using it, and that was very proficient when it comes to being fast to download and so on. But this could be a good option if you're still doing BitTorrent. I haven't been doing BitTorrent for a couple of years now. It requires a bit of drive and so on, and I don't really have that much material that I really need to torrent. But it could be interesting. And last but not least, we have CloudBot. And this is something that I haven't heard anything about, but they are actually being not sued, but Anthropic has told them that maybe you should change the name from CloudBot because it could be confused with our system. So CloudBot is not doesn't have anything to do with Anthropic. It's an open source tool that you can install on your machine in order to give access to some chatbot out there to do tasks on your machine on your behalf, or anyone that hacks that chatbot, of course. So it's very scary that people are actually doing this, but at least they don't have the name conflict anymore. And if you want to try it out, it's a GitHub repository here called Open Cloud that you can use in order to make your system less secure if you want to. I don't think I will look into this. It seems very scary to me. So this was what I wanted to cover today. I hope that you found this interesting. I hope that you learned something today. If you liked this video, give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. If you have any comments or suggestions, leave those in the comment section down below. And I really want to see you in the next video.